Welcome back. This is your JCN Evening News. President of the Bahamas Electrical Workers Union, Stefano Green, has led his members on several ferocious demonstrations against the government in recent times. And today he told our news team that 5 months after BEC workers were forced to work rostered shifts, they're giving the government 30 days to reverse this trend. Mr. Green told JCN News that the union's contract is being violated as the documents call for compensation for those rostered workers.
However, our contract speaks to what should happen with those employees for compensation. And Mr. Miller is refusing to adhere to the contract and compensate those persons who have been put on roster. And that's a direct violation of our contract. That's a direct violation of an agreement that is signed and stamped by the courts of this land. And so Mr. Miller is actually violating the laws of this land as it relates to contractual laws.
Last Thursday, BEC Chairman Leslie Miller told reporters that the corporation was able to save $5.9 million by placing BEC workers on that flexi shift system. Prior to that, BEC employees were able to rake in over $12 million a year in overtime alone. But ask Mr. Green and he'll tell you that this process is nothing but a waste of time.
It's a waste of man hours and waste of time, because you have persons who might be rostered to come to work, say, 7 o'clock in the morning. Nobody comes to BEC 7 o'clock in the morning to pay bills. So why would you have cashiers in BEC at 7 o'clock in the morning when it's still dark out and nobody's coming to pay bills? That just don't make no sense. Silly things like that are happening in certain areas. You have persons who they try to roster who have certain work that only needs to be done during certain hours, but they want to say, because the contract says that I can do it, I'm going to do it just for doing its sake. And so there was no thought, I can tell you, into what was done, and it's a lot of wasted man hours.
The BEC chairman also announced that before the end of the year, the corporation's workers would be mandated to contribute to both their medical and pension plans. But the BEWU president says BEC workers aren't the only government employees not contributing to these plans now, and they have a problem with that.
Right now, the union's position is we do have a problem contributing to pension plans, seeing that we're not the only one that does not contribute. You see, when Mr. Miller goes in the press and he makes his statement, he tries to make the Bahamian public think that, oh, BEC employees are the only one and we're robbing the Bahamian people and all this other stuff, which is far from the truth. But the union is not opposed to sitting down and intelligently discussing. But officially, the union's position and both unions' position is that's a benefit that we receive. We're not prepared to give up a benefit unless there's something that's mutually agreed to that will substitute for that benefit.
Well, classes at the Uriah McPhee and Stephen Dillard primary schools will resume tomorrow. This after crews work through the weekend to make much-needed repairs to those campuses. Education Minister Jerome Fitzgerald says cleanup is now taking place at both locations, with assessments expected to be carried out afterwards. School officials shut down both schools last week after uncovering a number of issues that pose significant health risk. But the minister is satisfied now that those problems have been rectified. Corville Python reports.
Health and safety concerns from mold at the Stephen Dillard Primary School and a malfunctioning air conditioning unit at Uriah McPhee forcing the closure of both schools last week, just the latest hiccup in this already rocky new school year. The schools remained closed Monday, but Education Minister Jerome Fitzgerald says the works are now complete, allowing the schools to reopen tomorrow.
Once we realized what the issue was and had Ministry of Works and Environment come and look at it, we realized what the problem was then, and we moved then quickly to address it. And in doing so, we felt it was best not to have the kids in school while that work was going on. And so we made the right decision then to have those repairs done and have them done as quickly as possible. But to say we knew it beforehand, that's not the case, as we would have addressed it.
Ministry of Works officials have been conducting repairs at public schools across the country since earlier this year, leaving many to wonder why these problems were only now discovered. But Minister Fitzgerald says some of these problems could not have been foreseen.
I mean, we have various levels of inspection from the Ministry of Works to our own persons in the department, the principals and the teachers, but you have to understand, some things, if they're concealed or you don't see them, you don't realize it's an issue. And as I said, once it came to our attention, what it was, we had to remove the sealant to find out that the ductwork wasn't properly done up to the standard that we had anticipated or expected. And once we found it out, then we went and moved to remedy the situation. I mean, those things happen.
Since last week, the Bahamas Union of Teachers and the Ministry of Education have been at odds as the union contends that the government has failed to honor its industrial agreement with teachers. The BUT has since filed 6 trade disputes and is currently in conciliatory talks with the Ministry of Labor. The Education Minister maintains that most of the union's issues are being addressed or have already been resolved. Nonetheless, though, he says he's optimistic that there will be an amicable end to this dispute.
And at the end of the day, I have no doubt that we have basically gotten past the worst of this, and we will go back to doing what we both think, I mean the union and ourselves, is in the best interest of moving education forward in this country. And we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. And this year we intend to make some major, bring some major initiatives to the forefront, which we feel lay the foundation for some of the changes we want to see in education.
The minister also indicating that he still plans to go through with cutting the salaries of those teachers who stayed out of class last Monday to demonstrate outside the Ministry of Education. Those cuts could come as early as the end of this month. Corbell Pike from JCN News.
Grand Bahama Port Authority Chairman Ian Fair's sudden decision to resign from his post has a lot of people on that island on edge. Last week, Mr. Fair announced he was resigning effective immediately. He said his post required a more hands-on approach, one that he could not give time to due to his many commitments. The Free National Movement's Grand Bahama Council says it's troubled by Mr. Fair's departure. The council says it's also very concerned about the state of Grand Bahama's economy. It says the Christie administration has failed to bring the leadership and vision required to turn Grand Bahama's ailing economy around. In fact, the FNM says the increased taxes, customs fees, and uncertainty about the implementation and effect of the value-added tax system have caused more damage to the island's fragile economy. But Progressive Liberal Party Chairman Bradley Roberts was quick to remind Bahamians that Freeport suffered significant economic deterioration, social dislocation, and, in his words, hit rock bottom under the FNM's watch. He says having presided over one of the steepest economic declines in the history of Grand Bahama, where general unemployment exceeded 20% and youth unemployment exceeded 30% during the last term in office, the FNM now has the nerve and gumption to open its mouth about PLP's stewardship of Freeport and Grand Bahama. Well, stay tuned. There's more JCN News next.